What's up guys, Landon here from the Full-Time Filmmaker team, and in this video I'm going to show you the difference between our primary wheels and our log wheels. So that would be lift, gamma, and gain versus our shadows, midtones, and highlight controls. Now, if you were to jump into Premiere Pro and do some color correction, all you would have are shadows, midtones, and highlight controls. You wouldn't have lift, gamma, and gain. And since a large majority of video creators start making videos with Premiere Pro, they don't even know about lift, gamma, and gain, but they're missing out on a lot more than they realize. So let me show you the main differences and why you should be using lift, gamma, and gain here inside DaVinci Resolve. So if we were to jump into our log wheels really quick, I'm going to switch that over. We have our shadows, our midtones, and our highlights. These are the tools that most video creators are familiar with. I'm going to pick one of them. Let's just say midtones, because I think that's going to give us the most dramatic example. So I'm going to go ahead and pull it up just like that. Pulling it up as high as it goes, all the way to 1. You can definitely see a change here in the image itself. You'll see there's a much more harsh line between our shadows and our midtones. But look at our waveform specifically. So before I added this is what our waveform looked like. Just a nice, smooth, straight line for the most part. Once I added that midtone adjustment, you'll see there's just this huge bump right here on the curve. So the midtones are specifically being affected pretty dramatically, but then our shadows and our highlights aren't even being affected. And I can do the same thing with our shadows and highlights as well. I'll go ahead and reset that. Let's bring up our shadows a bit. You'll see it's only bringing up those shadows, but again, midtones aren't affected, highlights aren't affected. We could also bring our shadows all the way down. You'll see it's still just affecting the bottom of the shadows right there. Go ahead and reset that. And then once again, same thing with the highlights. It's only affecting our highlights area right here. Same thing would happen if I brought it up. It's only affecting this area right here on our waveform. So again, our log wheels are only affecting the specific areas that we're targeting. So if we're targeting shadows, it's only gonna adjust shadows, midtones, only midtones, highlights, only highlights. But now let's just reset that. We're gonna jump to our primary wheels. We're gonna see the main difference between the controls that we just adjusted and now our lift, gamma, and gain. So once again, these wheels are targeting the same areas. Lift is adjusting the shadows, gamma is adjusting the midtones, gain is adjusting the highlights, but they work in a much more gradual way than what we saw with the log wheels. For example, if I go ahead and I pull up our gamma, you'll see the image is being affected, but now there's not this harsh line like we saw before with the log wheels. And now on our graph, there's not this huge notch on our line. Now it's just a nice, smooth, curved line. And then same thing if we brought down our lift, you'll see that the midtones and the highlights a little bit are actually compensating so that there's not this big sharp line on our image. It's still just more gradually making these adjustments. I'll reset that as well. And last thing I'm gonna do is adjust our gain. You'll see if I move this back and forth, our shadows and our midtones are still being affected. It's once again a much more gradual adjustment than if we were in our log wheels using the highlight controls. Definitely overexposed, but still more gradual. So you're probably wondering, when should I use one over the other? Now, short answer, lift, gamma, and gain, or your primaries, are for balancing your image. And shadows, midtones, and highlights, or your log wheels, are for creating specific looks. So again, primary wheels are generally more for color correction, and log wheels are more for color grading. Now, to help explain that just a little bit better, we're gonna use this gradient again, and we're gonna pretend that this is log footage. So to make this feel like log footage, I'm actually gonna bring these shadows up. We're gonna pull these highlights down. We're using our lift, gamma, and gain right here. So if you're working with log footage, your blacks don't usually look black, your whites don't usually look fully white. It's a pretty flat image. So here we've kind of imitated what log footage might look like. Just gonna make a new node for this example. Now, if I was correcting this log footage, I would want my blacks to be black and my whites to be white. I need to level out this image. So to do that, I'm gonna use my lift, gamma, and gain right down here on the left. And we want our blacks to be hitting just above 0, and we want our highlights generally to be right below the top of the waveform as well. So in order to do that, I'm gonna pull down my lift. You'll see on our waveform that this is going to be pulling down. So I'm going to put it about right there. And I'll pull my gain up. And I'm gonna leave that about right there. So again, as you can see, lift, gamma, and gain are great for balancing footage. And actually, just to give you a real life example, let's go ahead and we'll pull in an actual clip that was shot in Blackmagic Raw. So as you can see, our shadows are sitting a bit higher than they need to be. You'll see this is technically the lowest point of our shadows. And then our highlights as well aren't where they need to be. They're resting around this area. So the best way to fix that, once again, we're gonna use our lift to pull down those shadows just so they're barely hitting zero, just like that. And then we'll use our gain to pull up these highlights. Just gonna pull it up. And right about there is where we need to be. So there you go, that's a real life example. Let's jump back over to the gradient that we were using before. You'll notice that after we made that adjustment, bringing our lift down, bringing our gain up, trying to balance that image, on our waveform, this line is very smooth, pretty straight, slight S-curve happening, but still a very clean looking waveform. Now, if we tried to do color correction, but we were using the log wheels instead, our shadows, midtones, and highlight controls, it would be much harder and almost impossible actually to get the exact same result. So I'm gonna go ahead and reset this grade right here. So we're starting again with our flat log-like image. I'm gonna jump over to our log wheels right here. So now if I wanted to bring down our shadows and bring up our highlights so these levels were sitting where they need to be, I can go ahead and grab my shadows tool right here and I can bring it down, but can you tell how it's only adjusting just this part of our waveform? Same thing if I do it with our highlights. Not as dramatic, but it's still really only adjusting our highlights. So I guess to kind of compensate, I could bring down my midtones and I could try and pull it down right there. But look, we still have this weird bump going on right here. You'll see even in our image, there's a pretty harsh line happening between our shadows and then our midtones and then our highlights. It's just much harder to actually balance your image for color correcting when you're doing it in the log wheels. So again, the log wheels are to give your image a little bit more contrast to really make it pop. These are the wheels you use when you need to target specific areas of your image. If we jump back to that real life clip that I was using earlier, we'll scrub over here to this main part. Let me make a new node and let's go ahead and we'll make this image pop just using our log wheels right here. We go ahead and bring down our shadows just a bit, bring up our highlights a little bit as well. Maybe pull up the midtones just a tad. So this is before and after. Right here is only with the lift, gamma, and gain adjustments that we made to properly expose the image just a bit better. And now here, that's with our log wheels to give it just a little bit more pop. Generally, I wouldn't really use the shadows, midtones, and highlight controls specifically to make an image pop. It definitely works, but my preferred method is actually just to use the curves. So we can jump in right here, go ahead and reset this node grade, and I would just add just a little bit of an S curve on here to make it pop a bit more. Something along those lines. So guys, there's a brief explanation of lift, gamma, and gain versus shadows, midtones, and highlight controls. You can download this same gradient that I used, courtesy of B&H Photo, if you want to kind of play around with these controls for yourself. You can also download some sample footage in the downloads lecture above if you want to try this on actual footage. That's it for this video though. If you guys have any further questions, please let me know.